5 Deliberate Historical Errors and Misrepresentations. Number 5. The New Columbia Encyclopedia's fake article. The 1975 edition of the New Columbia Encyclopedia contains a deliberate error, an entire article concerning Lillian Virginia Mount Weasel, an alleged photographer from Bangs, Ohio. According to the article, Mount Weasel, who lived from 1942 to 1973, produced celebrated portraits of the South Sierra Miwok in 1964. The government allegedly thought so well of her work that it awarded her grants to make a series of photo essays of unusual subject matter, including New York City buses, the cemeteries of Paris, and rural American mailboxes. Ironically, the fake photographer died young, at the age of 31, in an explosion while on assignment for Combustibles magazine. Before her untimely demise, however, she saw her work displayed extensively abroad and published as flags up. She was quite an accomplished woman, especially since she never existed. She was a copyright trap, designed to catch violators who illegally copied the encyclopedia's content without due attribution or royalties. Number 4. Royal Mail's posts on database. The United Kingdom's Royal Mail, a privatized company, has 1.8 million postcodes in posts on, which is a database in comma-separated variable form. A copy of the database was leaked by Wikileaks. The copy included the longitude and latitude of each of the company's postcodes. The leaked database copy could be a goldmine for advertisers or others who want access to the postcodes. However, this does not seem to be the case. It seems that people fear the database may contain deliberate mistakes that Royal Mail could use to not only identify unlicensed use, but also to prove that the data was copied rather than created from scratch. The company refused to affirm or deny whether the database does, in fact, include such deliberate errors. The simple possibility that the database could contain them seems enough, however, to have discouraged potential data thieves. Number 3. Gilbert Stuart's portrait of George Washington. George Washington hangs in the East Room of the White House. No, not Washington himself, but rather a portrait of him. Specifically, a copy of a portrait of him, to be exact. Or one of several copies. The original, commissioned by Senator William Bingham and painted by Gilbert Stuart, occupies a place of honor in the Smithsonian Institute's National Portrait Gallery. Stuart also painted the copies. The paintings, original and copies alike, show Washington refusing a third term as president. The White House copy contains a spelling error, but it's not because Stuart couldn't spell well. The error is deliberate and has a purpose. It occurs in the spelling of the last word in the title of one of the books displayed in the lower left corner of the portrait, Constitution and Laws of the United States. Its purpose? To distinguish it from the original painting. The other copies also bear Stuart's deliberate error for the same reason. Number 2. The Jefferson Memorial. Besides having been a U.S. president and the author of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, one of his country's founders, was also a civic humanist, distrustful of the ways of commerce, a proto-socialist, suspicious of industry and opposed to capitalism, and a man who took sides in a host of other political, economic, and social issues. That's what the advocates and supporters of such causes would have had others believe, at least. Because of his historical importance and accomplishments, Jefferson has been held up frequently as an example of one who endorsed just about any cause, whether Jefferson himself was ever an advocate of it or not. For political purposes, even the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C., plays a bit fast and loose with the founder's actual words. Inscriptions on the interior walls of the memorial sometimes include words that he never said. Other times, truncated quotations present his words out of context. Ronald Humway, professor emeritus of intellectual history at the University of Alberta, regards these corruptions of Jefferson's views as perhaps the most egregious examples of invoking Jefferson for purely transient political purposes. Planned and built during the administration of Franklin D. Roosevelt, The memorial's inscriptions suggest that Jefferson advocated positions consistent with the aims of the New Deal, with which, some scholars contend, Jefferson would in fact have had little sympathy. Not only is Jefferson made to appear to have sympathized with the New Deal that President Roosevelt was so eager to promote, but Jefferson's belief in the value of ensuring that voters are educated so that liberty might be preserved were twisted into an endorsement of universal public education. Number 1. King Tut's Privates. Not all deliberate mistakes or misrepresentations are printed, digitized, inscribed, or handwritten. King Tutankhamun's private parts certainly were an FT. The boy pharaoh was entombed in an unusual way, without his heart and with his penis mummified erect at a 90-degree angle. Equally bizarre, his remains and the coffins containing them were covered in a thick layer of black liquid, which may have resulted in Tut catching fire. Why on earth was King Tut buried in such a peculiar fashion? Not surprisingly, these anomalies have caught the eye of both scholars and the media. The American University in Cairo's Egyptologist, Salim Ikram, thinks he knows, and he sets forth his hypothesis in a new paper in the journal Etudes et Travaux. King Tut's erection and the black liquid covering him and his coffins are deliberate, not accidental, effects of his embalming, designed to create the impression that he is none other than Osiris, god of the underworld. King Tut's virile manhood, as evident in his erection, suggests the god's own fertility, and the black liquid recalls Osiris's pigmentation. The absence of the pharaoh's heart alludes to Osiris having been dismembered by his brother Seth. Like Osiris, King Tut's heart was buried separately from the rest of him.